Board work session. We are here to discuss the 2021 school plan. It was suggested at our school board meeting on Monday that we have this work session so that we can sort of have a more informal discussion about our feelings about the two plans being offered. I know we have received a lot of emails and had a lot of phone calls this week. So I think today will give us, will allow for us to sort of process everything and talk more before our vote on Monday. I just want to reiterate, there's only a couple here in the audience, but we will not be taking audience comments. And I want to remind our school board that I listened to our meeting a few times on Monday, and we definitely need to speak in the microphones. So we kind of get laxed and lean back and stuff, but as much as we can, let's speak into our microphones. So I just want to have some opening remarks here. And obviously I'll have plenty to say during the meeting. Let's see. I want to thank everybody for being here this morning as we try to navigate through this difficult decision of how we return back to school. I'd like to quickly go back to our meeting on Monday as we received some feedback regarding comments that were made. First and foremost, we have always supported our teachers and staff. I hope by our past actions as a board and in partnership with Dr. Bishop and Mr. Catlett, we have proven that to you. Comments made regarding teachers going out and socializing was not meant to be disrespectful or insensitive. We understand teachers are going out and most likely taking safety precautions. The point was simply raised as an observation. While that some don't feel safe returning to school, they're also out and about trying to acclimate to our new normal, just like the rest of us. I also brought up furloughs. Some told me it sounded like a threat. It was not a threat. It is a harsh reality of our situation. And let me reiterate, we support our teachers. We have always done our best to show our support through our various actions, including our advocacy for pay increases. I've also heard people say they just want to get back to normal. There is no normal, which also means our school environment and the way we deliver instruction will not be normal. We're living in a new normal. If you want to come back to school, then the community needs to step up and take accountability for the safety of our students, employees, and community members. No one likes the masks, but they will be required in various school settings. If you want to come back to school, families will have to take responsibility in keeping their kids home when they're sick and not dosing them up on Motrin simply so they don't show up for a fever. These are just some examples of social responsibility, and you'll hear me bring this up over and over again. Is this plan feasible? I think so. We'll have some hiccups, absolutely. We are planning for unknowns, but so is everyone across the state and the country. There are going to be things that happen during the day that we simply cannot predict, but that's happened in the past during the normal days, and we were able to kind of get through it. This is a very tough decision, and maybe there's no right answer. People will be upset no matter what we decide, but as a board, I promise we will decide what's right for our school division in support of our teachers and students. I have plenty more to say, but I'll stop. Okay, so those are just some of my opening remarks. How I want to proceed with our meeting today is, I know we received a lot of questions. We have a rolling document of those questions, but I'd like to have more of an informal discussion, as I said earlier. Maybe talk about the questions or highlight the questions that are most important to you. We can have some to-dos for Dr. Bishop that he can be ready with for Monday, or have answers ready on Monday. And we'll just kind of see how everybody's feeling after this week. So
I have to leave a little bit after 11. I have a 12 o'clock meeting in Chester.
Okay.
So I just wanted to.
Okay. And then obviously I just want to remind everybody to keep your masks on, please. So Mr. Turkel, I'm going to start with you since you, it's your recommendation to have this work session. So did I just put you on the spot?
That's great. That's fine. We've got a limited time, but I think one of the challenges with the board meeting format is that I have a lot of access to Dr. Bishop's school staff. I do by email. He's one of the most responsive people I know. But we are limited in our ability to have conversations with the board. And, you know, a lot of times in work sessions, we reform the table so that, you know, we're either across from each other. I understand the necessity of having this format. But I would encourage us not to, because we're in the school board setup, not to feel like we can't just talk and you know, bring ideas and you know, at times perhaps interrupt each other respectfully. But nonetheless, that's the idea. I wanted access to the board, not so much Dr. Bishop. I mean, he's a critical part of what we do, and he needed to be here, but that was the rationale. And then, so in the questions that we formulated, are those available for folks?
Are they available to post?
Are they available? I mean, when I speak about it, do people know what I'm talking about? When I say the questions that we put together for each other?
No, if you want to go and explain what we did.
Okay, well, we just had a Google Doc with a bunch of questions in it and no answers, but just a bunch of questions to help us perhaps with this meeting. And I think, you know, on Monday, I was a little overwhelmed by the number of questions. Again, didn't have some big picture opportunity to talk to the board. Here we are. So I put in things like, you know, rather than specifics, that I did put in specifics, but I wanted to have, I felt like that's what's appropriate for a school board meeting. And that's appropriate for me to talk to Dr. Bishop about and work through. More, it was questions like, you know, how are we going to balance our decision making between the idea of data, science, and emotion? And all three of those are very important aspects of how we end up with a successful solution. So, you know, that's not a question that Dr. Bishop's going to be able to answer for us, but one that hopefully we can work through. Another one was, you know, when is it appropriate to tell teachers that getting back in the classroom is a condition of their employment? When we say we're going to open the schools, we're saying that, and that comes with a lot of trepidation and a lot of responsibility for us, and it's a big ask. So we need to be clear that we understand that we're making this big decision for other people as we move forward. And so that's the beginning of it, and that's why we're here. Again, like to stop talking a little bit, but and have more of the dialogue. But there's a lot of emotion, and cutting through the noise has been a big part of what I've been trying to accomplish as I stay up late and lose sleep at night and all these fun things. And so getting to something that I can stand on that's solid, it's tricky. So I think I feel better about what we're trying to decide now than I did on Monday. But you know, for today, it's more about trying to come together as a team rather than well-intentioned individuals to be able to have a coherent path forward that we in the community can understand. So with that, and for perhaps the biggest question I have is how this idea of data science and emotion. People are fearful, but that's something that changes with the wind, and so people are obstinate and insistent, and that's something that has no basis other than their state of mind. So where do we land in all of that? So you know, I think there needs to be a balance. I tend personally to be kind of on the data science side, but I recognize that has its limitations. And so I'd like to hear from others about, you know, how important, you know, or the importance of the emotional side. So I'll just put that out.
Can I ask you a couple of questions? Mine are directed to you, Chuck, and you probably can answer them. all, and I'm going to go to the data side here. These are just a couple of holes that I had. You mentioned the other night, I think I'm correct in saying that we had spent a couple of $100,000 already sort of preparing for the semester. And I'm assuming that's just in general, whether we go hybrid or whether we go digital. There were certain things that you had to do.
$246,417 and some odd cents.
Okay, I'll give you the sense.
Yeah, about half of that is in an enhanced cleaning protocol with our current custodial vendor.
Okay.
Which primarily provides additional staff, cleaning of high-touch surfaces, hand sanitizing stations, a variety of things that they can offer, including an electrostatic disinfectant sprayer for each building. Okay. But it's an enhanced cleaning protocol. Other items, no, other items would be specific to a hybrid or in-person model. As an example, infrared thermometers. I have 47 of them in my office.
So that money's already, that's already spent.
Correct.
How much more do you think we would spend if we decided to go hybrid?
Well, it's kind of an unknown because we're going to have a running supply, if you will, of personal protective equipment, hand sanitizer, disinfecting wipes, etc. Buildings are right now continuing to be cleaned. I do have I'll call it a starter kit of signage for bathrooms and for hallways and those kinds of things. More of that will need to be ordered to encourage social distancing, to put marks on floors so students and staff stay far enough apart. So can I put a dollar amount on it? I can tell you this, everything that comes across, and I probably get 25 to 30 emails a day from somebody who wants to sell me something related to coronavirus. Even companies that have not dealt in PPE or hand sanitizer in the past have started to because there's money to be made. I wish I could tell you it was going to be $500,000 or $1 million, but to date, I have no way of knowing that because I don't know how quickly, as an example, a classroom will go through disinfecting wipes.
Okay, so to break it down, some of the expenses would be capital expenses in like putting the signs up, buying the signs, and some are going to be what I would call operating expenses.
Disposable.
Yeah, that you're going to accumulate. And so we don't know whether it's going to be $500,000 or $1 million, but it's going to be some relatively big number. Okay, so I'm just trying to look at the cost side of the differences. I know that we talked about furloughs the other night, and generally it was sort of presented in a way that made me think when I first left here, until I thought about it some more, that if we went digital, we're going to have furloughs, and if we went hybrid, we would not have any furloughs. That doesn't seem logical to me because it seems that you're going to have some programs that are going to cut in a hybrid system. PE, you know, I mean, that was just one that came to mind. Since all sports has been discontinued, I'm assuming the PE would at least be affected.
Not necessarily. The idea is, and PE and sports certainly aren't one and the same.
Yes.
We could start, if physical education is an example, the middle and high school is more problematic. Yeah. Because of the use of locker rooms and changing clothes.
That's what I was thinking about.
At the elementary level, if you have 10 students in a classroom and you're using either of our elementary gyms, they're fairly big. So to be able to keep kids socially distanced appropriately is a possibility at the elementary level. Obviously, use of equipment, those kinds of things would have to be considered. But there are very few surfaces, if you will, in a gym. You know, they're not desks, they're not chairs, they're not books. We would have to be really mindful of the equipment that's being used. But as an opportunity for a student to get in and burn off some energy in an elementary PE classroom, that would be potentially possible. Middle and high is a different thing. So we would start the middle and high school with health education first, because it's the classroom portion. At some point during the year, they're in health anyway. There's a question in the document about health and PE and health and about the curriculum. Teachers would be responsible for developing that curriculum. And they already have several different units planned. So if they had enough time to plan those, they could use the information they have right now, the curriculum they have right now, at least initially, and then develop other units as we move forward.
Okay.
Including the family life education curriculum.
But I'm not gonna knock it down to asking you to go through all the positions and everything. But then is it generally true that if you go digital, you have furloughs? If you go hybrid, you have no furloughs?
In a digital environment, we will have furloughs.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think we can afford furloughs. I think that.
Well, wait a second. That's a different question. Let me just get the answer to this question.
Sure.
In a digital environment, we will have furloughs.
Yeah.
There will be certain positions that we do not need. In the document, there's a question about, well, are furloughs required? No, they're not required, but we want to be mindful of the tax dollars and the money that's being spent.
Especially if we're spending $500,000.
Right, and, you know,
non-budget expenses.
There was also another question in the document, can bus drivers deliver food? We would want to be as efficient as we can with staff. The food situation will change next year. It will no longer, unless the USDA continues to allow this summer food service program, which we've operated under since March, it will be a paid meal program, just like it has been forever. We typically don't qualify here in Clarke County for those special programs. So it'll be a paid program. How many people will take advantage of that? We're not sure yet. But we would want to be efficient with use of our cafeteria staff in preparing the food. They could prepare 5 breakfasts and 5 lunches for the week, and we could deliver to those who need it on one day. We could have curbside pickup on one day, just like we do now, Tuesday, Wednesday. So again, we wouldn't need bus drivers for 5 days. We wouldn't need the majority of the cafeteria staff. We have been managing the meals program since March with 4 people. So the reality is there will be furloughs in a 100% virtual model.
Well, there'll be the potential for furloughs because you said they're not mandatory.
There'll be the functional,
Okay.
yeah, functional ability to have furloughs. Okay, but if we go hybrid, you wouldn't anticipate any furloughs?
There still could be some,
That's what
but not to the
extent.
Not to the magnitude.
Okay.
If there's a decision made, let me rephrase that. If there's a decision made to furlough employees, it wouldn't be to the magnitude.
Okay. All right. I remember also either it was a conversation we had or it was in the meeting that due to distancing, I think you were using the example of a 60-person bus could carry 20 people or 20-some people once you put the distancing rules in. I may be off there, but I know it's a big reduction. So, and I know we've taken Berryville out of the equation as far as bus delivery. At least that was
proposed.
That's proposed. So how do we get, if we do, I know only half the students would be coming on each day, but if a 60-person bus goes to 20, would we be running double bus routes to get them?
We'd have to in some cases.
Okay, I figured. And these are, the net of whatever these are all non-budget items. Is the county, I saw our county executives comment, I think in the paper, that the bulk of this one fund that we got, they're planning on giving to the schools. I don't know exactly what that amount would be, but if they're non-budgetary, can we get the money from the county to cover these extra non-budgetary items?
The county got $1.2 million approximately in CARES fund. There was in my understanding from Mr. Boyce, there was a small or a set-aside portion for both the town of Berryville and the town of Boyce.
Mm-hmm.
And once that was out of the way, whatever they ended up with, I'm not sure how much that amount was.
Okay.
Right now, there has been $500,000 set aside for schools.
Mm-hmm.
And another $100,000 set aside to assist with some kind of child care option for folks.
I'm almost to the end of my list. thank you for hanging with me. If we decide to go hybrid and something happens during the semester and we have to switch over and go digital, are there additional operating costs and sort of decoupling from the one? And, okay,
No.
all right.
We will be prepared to go 100% digital regardless, because I think the reality is at some point we will be. I would be shocked if we're not.
Okay.
Whether that's a locally imposed decision or if it's a state imposed decision.
Okay, that is my starting point too. That's my sort of expectation.
I think cost is a very important, consideration, and something that we would need to talk to the board of supervisors about. I mean, I think we have to proceed on the assumption that we have what we have, and that's what we need to work with. But if our plan and the difference between succeeding and not succeeding requires a certain dollar amount, I think that then there's probably the opportunity to talk to the board of supervisors about access to those funds.
Yeah, I'm just trying to sort of,
No,
on the
fine.
data side,
Right,
down.
I'm trying to keep it a conversation.
Let's see, I'm assuming on the digital we're set, and I mean, we've been working on it, and if that's the way we end up being either in the middle of the semester or at the beginning, we're pretty much good to go there.
Yeah, we have made some decisions about the platform, Google Meets. We are going to upgrade to the enterprise version versus the education version, which has a lot more functionality. We also know that that Google for Education, they're going to restrict Google Meets back down to a max of 25 participants, which they actually had extended during the initial school closure. So we looked at the enterprise solution. We had that conversation on Tuesday after the board meeting Monday night, and we knew we were going to look at Google Meets as the platform, but we are going to upgrade to the enterprise solution, which has a lot more functionality. It's important for people to understand too, both parents, students, and teachers and staff, that the virtual environment won't look like it did in the spring.
Well, I'm
It will
assuming
be
partially because you've had time to prepare.
right. It will be virtual in-person instruction by a teacher, and there will be expectations. Work will be graded, etc. Credits will be earned toward the graduation at the high school, as an example, and at the middle school for those who are in credit-bearing courses. So it will not look like it did in an emergency setting in the spring.
That's great. And this is my very last item. One of the problems that we talked about the other night is the families that don't have good digital access if you go digital. Is there a way, and one of the problems was the last time, all the places that traditionally in our community, you go to the library to get digital access, a coffee shop, all those places were shut and there was no place to go. Is there a way that we could, say, open the cafeteria or some space that people could come and have digital access, through our system? If we were digital and we had, I can't remember, but I think the number was 40-some families or something like that. It was affecting that number is stuck in my head. Is there a way that we could, if we were digital, that you could open instead of the library, and let's just say it was a worst case scenario and the library closed again? Is there a way that we could open a portion of the school so we could make downloading possible for these people?
Okay, that's kind of two different questions, and I'll answer them both briefly.
Okay.
With this statement to start with, I think some of that is also a philosophical decision, because if you are saying that based on the conditions, we're in a 100% digital environment, do you want people in the building? Okay, so that's a philosophical position that the board has to settle on at some point.
Yeah.
We could work through our technology department to make, public Wi-Fi spots at schools. As an example, we had one at Johnson Williams during the spring. We set one up at Boys. I've thought about like the Blue Ridge Fire Department to serve that area of the county. Would certainly have to have some talk or some conversation with them about that. But opening the buildings, you can do that from outside without going in. If we have a learning center, I started thinking about this over the last couple of days. Would there be a way for students to come into the building to access internet, to be able to do assignments, But again, when I come back to that, I think about, well, the philosophical position of this board. And if you're saying that it's not safe for people, students, to be in school, is granting access then contrary to that?
I realize that the conundrum, but I'm just trying to say, is there a way that we could provide access where people could come and download and then go home, because it'll then be on the computer and they could do their work and they could come either and upload or I don't
We're
know
also
all that.
currently working on a Wi-Fi map for the community,
Mhm.
so that we can have all of the different Wi-Fi spaces that are available in the community. Pat's been working on that. That will be part of our website for instructional technology and the resources, whether it's McDonald's or a coffee shop or the library or wherever it might be. We're working on that Wi-Fi map as well.
Okay.
So it's important to understand the pathways in what they look like in order to decide which one we're choosing. I think that if we back up, there needs to be a basis of the determination rather than it feels like we're in an uncertain COVID world, and therefore we just need to go one way, because I don't see it as that easy a decision. And so in terms of a basis of determination, does this board feel like we want to find some metric that we would use to determine when it's appropriate to be in school and when it's appropriate to shut down school based on that metric? Now, there's a lot of different variables that go on to, situations that may shut schools, but just in terms of schools will be open when rates are at a certain level, they will close when they're at a certain level, and if we're in this window, we're okay. That's what New York City's doing. I don't know exactly what the metric would be for us, but is that a way that we would want to proceed?
Well, I think it's very likely that we would receive a directive like we did with football and fall sports.
We received our directive from the VDH and the governor saying, you guys open and figure it out. You're free to open and figure it out. I mean, I think that basically sums it up.
But I'm saying if things got worse, I think it could be.
If things get worse, you shut down, and that's what the ceiling and the floor are. It's like, you're open when you're in this window and you're closed when you're out of it. Is that something that we want to consider? Or do we want to just run on, it feels like we should go this way, or it feels like we should go that way? And that gets back to that emotion thing. I mean, I'm like, hey, if we can find a data that we can stand behind, then people will know where we are. They will know what's coming. They'll see how we're headed. And then we'll be able to know from that standpoint.
I tend towards data and science. So I am on the same page with you with that, John. I think that there's not one metric that we could look at. So we couldn't pin it on, for example, per capita infection rates or percent positivity. I think there would need to be a constellation of different data points to be considered, and they would be weighted differently whether or not we had an outbreak in a nursing home in Berryville that pushed our rates up really high, or we had an outbreak in Boyce Elementary School. So to me, it might be arbitrary to pick something that's a cutoff line, because I think that there are going to be so many different pieces of data that we'll need to consider.
So
but I do like using data, to make our decision, and not just data from our local area, but data from other places who have tried similar things kind of as we go through the year, and we see how this goes in other localities and other counties and states.
I don't have the technical expertise or the health. I'm not an epidemiologist. I can't tell you what this trigger should be.
Yeah, nor am I, but if we can get to that place, is that an acceptable pathway? If we can get someone that we feel confident in that endorses a window of operation, is that something that you would be open to?
If somebody can demonstrate to me I mean, we're not an island. And if Winchester hits a hot button and or Frederick County and or Jefferson County, it might not be here yet. I just want to, I want to hear from an epidemiology point of view, what should be those triggers in your system. And the other thing is, we can have all the data we want, but if 25 or 30 families or 10 or 15 faculty members says, hey man, it doesn't feel safer anymore, I'm out. At what point does having a hybrid system?
But that gets to the point of, can we pull this off? That's a different question. That is, can we actually make it happen? We've spread ourselves thin in this process, and if we start yanking pieces out of it, it's gonna not be viable. And that's a different question. I think the question is, can we just have something that helps us determine whether we're in school or out of school?
I think for me, I'm not meaning to dominate, but I've only got half the time. I think for me, I'm starting in the same place that Chuck mentioned. That I'm assuming that if we go hybrid, at some point during the semester, we're going to get closed down. And so at that point, I'm assuming furloughs would kick in. We would be all digital. And I'm glad to hear we won't have any decoupling, big decoupling capital expenses from that. But I think from everything that you read, I forwarded to Monica a story that I had read right before I came to the meeting the other night about why all the counties to the east are going digital. I know that there's a couple around here that have chosen to go hybrid. It's about this, and they're talking about an average of 2,000 person high schools. We're a lot smaller, and we're also farther from there. But with a 2,000 person high school in our region, there's a 95% probability in any day that somebody in the school is going to be actively infected. And so if that's the case, I can come up with a list this long of things that could go wrong that could force us out. And the only thing that I can really come up with on the other side is, statistically, by the grace of God, we avoid it.
Okay, and that's a source that would need to be vetted, just like any source that tells us how to proceed would need to be vetted. So it's good information. It's something to be considered of, but I would say that an unsighted source is something.
That's why I sent it to Monica. I didn't circulate it to everyone. I just did it. What was it, yesterday I sent it to you?
Oh.
Yeah.
And that gets to feelings, and I think the emotion, I think that's an important aspect, and I think that, you know, it's a
To me, it's a data.
well, it's a data that says that I don't feel good about something.
Yeah, but John, that stuff matters.
Absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely.
right?
And I'm
So
not just kind of.
I get that you're this data, I mean, I think we're all data people, but at the same time, it is a conundrum. We cannot help having emotions around all of this.
Absolutely.
Right? As a community, as a school, for me, as a school board member, you know, I'm a pretty emotional person, so that's where I land a lot. And so this week I've really had to compartmentalize that, understanding that we do need to rely a lot on data. Again, there is the gray. There is a lot of gray here. And quite frankly, all week, one day I've literally woken up going, I think this is how I'm gonna go. Next day, literally the exact opposite. Last night, definitely decided. This morning, I still think I'm there, but that doesn't mean now I'm not waffling a little. There is a lot of gray here. So to think, I think maybe coming up with some data metrics could help us, but to think that we can only really rely on one or some type of threshold that we're above or under, I think could be difficult. And I'm putting this out there too. I don't trust a lot of the data. It's just too much. There's too many contradicting facts and numbers. And so to your point, which one would we pick? Which few would we pick? What would we rely on? And we know we're a bit of an anomaly because we're a small county. So luckily our numbers are low, and there are counties in this, the state that are, I don't know, have like 2 cases. So there's an argument to be made that we're not a Fairfax County, you know, we're not these bigger counties, Hampton Roads, right? They're peaking up, yeah. So anyway, I'm just back to that. We've got the data, yes. Does Clarke have a low number? Sure. Does that mean we could potentially be safe going into school? Sure. Does that mean when everybody starts going to school that the schools won't start becoming a petri dish? Everybody says, oh, kids won't get it, they don't get it, great. Are we gonna turn into the next nursing home? Is that what these schools are gonna look like? I don't know. Are teachers gonna be going to Loudoun and working? They're offering hybrid up there. We know folks, when things start opening, they might be going to DC and working, coming back home. Again, social responsibility, families aren't, and they don't have to tell us if they're feeling sick or what's going on, if doctors are this. I mean, so I've just disrupted this whole thing, but yes, there's data, but then there's, like, for me, there is a lot of emotional aspect to it too.
So John, are you asking for data points to determine digital or hybrid? Or are you asking for data points to determine like when we're going to close and when we're going to say, shut it down? That's enough, because I'm not sure.
Yeah, the determination of if you're open and you decide to shut it down, I think comes from a couple of things. One is, you know, if we decided that there was this metric and we, you know, left it, we would shut down if we were outside the window. Another one would be if there was an incident and the Department of Health instructed us that that was the process to take. And the third one would be if we determined that we were not able to uphold the protocols that were instituted in the plan. So I see those as the criteria for shutting down. I think what I'm trying to get to is how do we determine if we can be in school? And is there a data set that we feel confident in, that the community would feel confident in, that would allow us to understand, you know, this is the way we're going to go. And it's complicated, like Zara said, because there's so many nuances, but at least to have something that helps us to say, this is where we're going to go, rather than, you know, I can see how things can go south. Because I can see how things could go north, to be quite honest. I can see that a drug maker comes up with a drug that takes care of the symptoms to the point where it's not such a high risk disease. And then they ramp it up, and in a couple months, everybody's in school 5 days a week. I can see that just as easily as I can see nobody, you know, this thing goes the opposite direction. So, I mean, I think there's uncertainty in all these perspectives, and I just want, you know,
So
I guess.
I think that data obviously is important, and having numbers and looking at those numbers. But I also think that Dr. Bishop and your staff make decisions every year that don't have a data point. For example, like, you know, I've sent you a text last winter, like there's black ice everywhere. You know, I just fell. And, you know, but we may have the black ice in Berryville, but nothing in Boyce, and then we decide to close. That's obviously not at all similar to a pandemic, but there are decisions that you all make that, you know, we don't have data for.
And you err on the side of safety.
Always.
And you know, to John's point, I
You
think
err on the side of safety.
data, it would be great to have a metric, because I think that makes it fairly cut and dry that yes, we're in school or no, we're not. But the real metric that you alluded to in one of your three is somebody tests positive, or there's direction from the health department, which would almost be the same. So the real metric could be one, depending on where that person is, student or staff member, how many other schools that person might have potentially impacted. You know, there are students who ride a bus to Cooley in the morning, who then transition to Boyce off of Route 7, or at the east side of Route 7. And if those students are riding the bus with Cooley students and then they're transitioning to boys, then there's this, we have looked at the possibility of trying to eliminate that shuttle run. But as it exists today, it's possible that one of the students who lives on East 7 who goes to boys rides that bus, jumps the shuttle bus to boys, could potentially impact Cooley student. The Cooley student has a Johnson Williams sibling. So is there possible exposure there? So the metric would make it, I don't want to say easier, helpful to be able to say, oh, we have this and we're going to do that. So I don't disagree with you. But we do make a lot of decisions that aren't data-driven, inclement weather decisions. We also make many decisions every year that are data-driven. So I wish it was that cut and dry. I have not seen, and I've looked at a lot of school plans, talked with a lot of superintendents, had some feedback from the health department on this particular plan, Dr. Davis, and at no point have I seen anybody offer those metrics. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but I've not seen it.
I brought a little bit of data to talk about in just one area of data, and that's per capita infection rates. Sometimes it's really difficult when you look at just numbers, raw numbers in a county or a locality to know what that means in comparison to a more populous or less populous area. So when you take our infection rate in Clarke, it's 420 cases per 100,000 residents. When you look at Frederick County, it's 639 cases per 100,000 residents. Winchester City has a higher per capita infection rate than Fairfax County. And they're in the Shenandoah Valley with us. But we are deeply connected to just those neighboring counties. Winchester City has a per capita rate of 1284, and Fairfax County has a per capita infection rate of 1273. And so I think to look at raw numbers and say, we only have 60 cases, relative to our population, we're still the lowest in the area. That's true. But as Chip said, we're not an island. And we have parents that are commuting to, DC, which has per capita rate of 1569. And I know, on that same vein, people like to mention these success stories of countries that have reopened their schools successfully. Denmark, Norway, Germany, they've done a great job. And they did that with low community transmission rates already in place before they even considered opening schools. Universal masking, use of outdoor classrooms heavily, and social distancing. We don't have low transmission rates. Compared to Denmark, Clarke County's per capita transmission rate is almost double. Denmark's as a whole country was 226 when they opened schools. So, I think that it's nice to look at these other places that did it successfully. But first, as a community and a country, they successfully controlled the disease. And I don't think we're there yet. We're not isolated here in Clarke. So that's something that concerns me. And then when you look at countries that even Israel opened with low community transmission rates, but they just opened. They dropped the mask requirement within a couple weeks because it was hot and they didn't want to wear masks during a heat wave. They put everyone back in the classroom, and they had huge outbreaks there and had to shut down hundreds of schools in Israel. So, as an answer to some in the community that suggests just open 5 days a week, using data is, and these are small data points because the reality is that this disease has not been around for that long. And so when you go searching for, large scale, peer reviewed published data about children in COVID, about children in COVID in school settings. There's just not that much because it's so new. And so, you know, there's a lot that we don't know. And a lot of the things that we do, we don't know, they're anecdotal and they're published in the media. And they might be reliable sources. You know, Johns Hopkins is a great tracker for per capita and 7-day moving average in the health departments and such. But as far as large scale studies, they're not done. Not enough time has passed. And so I like data, and there is a lack of data.
Well, I think what we're talking about now, I mean, for this meeting, in the meeting on Monday, we have just a simple binary choice. Are we going to open digitally, or opening 5 days a week is not part of my decision tree. We can either open hybrid, or we're going to open all digital. And so the fact that it's just a choice of two, at least there's a lot of stuff on each side there. But I think we can take all these numbers and what it costs for this, but I think in general what you're talking about, if you open digital, you are clearly saying we're trying to be safe. You know, I mean, we're not letting people in the building, as Chuck just said. We're not
I
safe.
actually don't agree with that completely. I don't think it's only about safety. If we open digital, we're choosing continuity and you know, minimal disruptions for our students, because I think we're choosing quality education, in my opinion, because if we can.
On the digital side or on the other side?
On the digital side,
Okay.
Because I think none of us thinks that virtual education is superior to face-to-face education. However, if we all acknowledge that we're going to end up there at some point, and we pour our money and our time and our creative energy into a hybrid solution that's likely to be discontinued at some point, rather than pour that same amount of energy over the next 6 weeks into making the virtual program as good as we can, I think that when we shut down and scramble to switch to virtual, it won't be as good as it could have been if we focus on it from as early as possible, starting Tuesday.
And I think,
Well, we're going to have digital anyway as part of a hybrid program, because some people are going to.
But it's different
I
because
understand.
the fully digital is synchronous.
You're
And-
preaching to the choir.
Yeah, so it's not the same. I mean, the platform is the same, but the type of instruction that teachers will have to create to be fully digital is very, very different than what they will create for kids to use asynchronously on the same day that teacher has other students in the classroom.
But I think on the other side, I mean, two of the things for me are emotional is I do believe in you do everything you can for your faculty, for your teacher corps. And you're taking as a part of all the things you just talked about, you're taking the fact that we know there are going to be furloughs. You know, I mean, we just know if you go hybrid, we know there are going to be furloughs. And we also know we are passing some of the stress, so to speak, onto the families, because all of a sudden they've got to scramble. I have said about some of my clients over the years, in the world of stress, they're a carrier. We would be then, they never show stress, but they're carriers. We would then be passing the stress onto the families. I mean, some of the stress. So to me, those two issues are important. And actually most of the conversations I've had, whether by phone or email or just seeing people in the street that have kids in the school, have centered around that issue, the amount of chaos it puts on the families. And I'm on the other side of that divide from you. You all have got kids in the school. I don't anymore.
and I can say, you know, as a parent of 2 kids in the
Yeah.
school system, it would be the easier choice for the Cohobert family to go hybrid. Bottom line.
understand that.
I was doing school at 5 p.m. with my 5th grader, and on a Friday night, trying to get a math lesson figured out with him when I didn't even really know what we were doing. There's some kind of like acronym that they're supposed to follow to help them figure out measurement techniques, that kind of thing. So that was so frustrating. So for people to say, that we're not taking into consideration the difficulty of choosing a digital only plan, that's not accurate, because it will be hard. But we also now have the time, and we also have the opportunity to collaborate, even amongst schools, Boyce and Cooley, to really create something good that's solid and consistent. And we have excellent, truly, I believe this, we have excellent technology people in our county. Pat Hauserman being one, Ed Shoebridge being another. And there have been so many opportunities too to, for digital learning, professional development over the summer that, Pat's sending them out constantly. So yes, for me personally, the hybrid option would be easier, because I could go to work and my kids are at school, and then the days that they're home, we would figure it out. But then to flip, like, oh, we've got some cases, that whole plan that you guys have that our family has figured out is now gone, because we're all back home.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what the plan looks like,
This is exactly where I was falling apart, not even having kids at home anymore. I'm going, once you get to that point, you may have a better idea than I do, Dr. Bishop. But any type of sort of forecasting to come up with some kind of balancing mechanism, it all falls apart. Do you agree with the general notion that if we just went digital from day one, and we could perhaps come up with a more robust product, as opposed to running a hybrid, then have to switch to all digital halfway through? Is that a wrong assumption?
Well, we're going to have to plan for it anyway. As I said earlier, 100% virtual will more than likely happen at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And in the document, in your questions document, there are several questions about virtual and in-person and asynchronous, etc. The virtual programs don't look the same in each model. I just tried to explain, I don't know how well I did it on Monday, that a student in the hybrid model on their off day will have learning activities that support what they did on the in-person days. So if I'm in school on Monday, I'm going to be in front of my teacher. I'm going to be learning whatever material and concepts are taught that day. I'm going to have some guided practice in class. And then the next day when I'm at home, I'm going to have asynchronous activities that support that, what was taught. I go back to school on Wednesday. I'm going to be in front of the teacher again. We're going to go over that, make sure I've got it, and we're going to do our next thing. In this plan that we've proposed, people have choice. If you choose the virtual academy, and there was a sample schedule on, I think it was page 38 in the document. We have 4 days of face-to-face, separate teachers, and those periods are shorter because we don't want students being in front of a computer all day long. So there's some work with teachers synchronously, and then there's some independent study, independent practice kind of at the end of the day, like a 1:30 to 3:30 time, 1:30 to 3 time frame, if my memory serves me correctly. So the virtual environment and hybrid or 100% virtual doesn't look the same. But having said that, we have to plan for 100% virtual for all students. because we believe we will get there at some point.
Okay.
I hope I answered your
You
question.
did, that you
But,
tied up.
I don't want there to be a misconception or a misperception, either one, about what those two models look like.
I understand.
It will look different. Virtual will look different in hybrid than it does 100%.
Okay, all right.
And just, I guess it's just a comment, I can't imagine being a teacher right now.
Yeah.
I mean, truly, like, to be planning for your hybrid situation. So you're planning for your students to be there, and then you're planning what they're gonna do the next day. And then there's also this other plan, this what if plan. What if we go digital, next week?
And
Because there's been a rise. No.
the disruption piece is real. I mean, I understand exactly where Katie's coming from in terms of what would be the easy choice for her family and how that could be upended if it's 100% virtual, and I get that. We deal with the same thing in our house with two students in the school system. 100% virtual will be disruptive for all families. No doubt about it. So some families in the hybrid, all families in the virtual, for sure. Unless you have the opportunity to be at home, or families that have somebody that can be at home all day that maybe doesn't, work outside the home. It's going to be disruptive. And even for somebody who is at home and works inside the home every day, having 2 students or 3 students who are at different grade levels and different subject areas, and 3rd grade math and 6th grade math and algebra 2 is disruptive.
Yeah, perpetual disruption. I think that's where I get stuck on it, and I don't see it as this opportunity of quality education. And I weigh that perpetual disruption against the disruption in the event of a unanticipated school closure, and I have to put those together. And one other thing is this, before Chip has to leave, I think it's also important for us to consider that in June we were told that 91% of parents wanted their kids to come back in a hybrid model, and that's why Chuck spent so much time putting together his plan for that thing. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if that number has gone down, but as a representative of the community and parents, I think that even if that number has gone down by some big percent, 30, 40%, it needs, there's a lot of people that are asking us to figure out how to make this work.
That's what makes it a conundrum, right there. If you take the students and their families and the staff and the county being the financer of it all, as your constituents.
And it's the conundrum that I am trying so desperately to find some framework of decision-making that allows us clarity and confidence, and that we can share that with the community.
I don't think there is one, or someone would have found it.
Okay, but I'm not ready to give up.
Okay, I'll buy that. You got till Monday.
And so on that line, if not ready to give up, I did have an opportunity to speak to the ex-administrator for the Lord Fairfax Health District last night. He left in June. He suggested that we have Dr. Green speak to us about if we were to try to develop a metric, and also I think it would be helpful to have him speak to us about the VDH's role in guiding us in the event. We had a lot of questions at the board meeting about how do we decide that this is happening in the classroom, And so I've worked with VDH, and in my work, we've had incidents, we've reached out to them, they've been amazing. It really is, it's so reassuring to know that you've got someone to go to that can give you the guidance that is appropriate per the situation, rather than just, the sky's falling. You gotta go that route, because again, it's expert opinion as opposed to, the uncertainty. So if that can, he can magically materialize sometime, that would be amazing. I don't know if it's Chris Boys that we need to talk to him, or if we can reach out or something, if that's somebody that folks want to hear from.
Well, I'm not saying that you couldn't get anybody out, we can get him on Monday though.
No, the decision doesn't have to be made on Monday.
But it can't be,
It can't be postponed indefinitely.
I mean,
Um,
yeah, I mean,
We need a
They
decision
need-
sooner rather than later.
if we want them to put this plan together, whatever
yeah,
way we
gotta-
decide and
I understand
refine
why we
it.
gotta decide on Monday.
If we don't do it Monday, then it won't,
We got to. We just can't.
We only
It's
have a couple
unfair to the
days.
staff,
we're getting it done early next week, that's for sure.
because
We have
Monday
to.
will be what the,
And we postpone the school schedule 2 weeks. I mean, it's not like nothing's possible in the world of stretching things out. If we need to postpone the school another week, we can do that. We have a lot of tools at our disposal. There's no have-tos. There's should-dos, but there's no have-tos. I would present.
well, I'm planning on that being the date. I'm just assuming that that's when we're gonna
Fair, I plan
do
on
it, and I understand we've put it in, but I think as far as the planning required for the staff going forward, Monday will be what is it, 18th, 19th, 20th? Even with delaying you're talking 40 days until we open school for Monday, approximately 41 maybe. That's not a lot of time to decide for them to make the preparations based on this decision.
Absolutely.
I think we gotta go forward.
I agree, but I mean, I think John's point of, allowing someone who is an expert in the field to present additional,
No problem.
evidence to us is important enough that if we had to have another meeting on Wednesday
Or Thursday.
yeah, fine. I'm fine with that. I think there's value in hearing from these experts. I don't think that speed should, be weighed more heavily than
Well, I guess,
quality.
I don't think that's what Chip and I are saying, I think, well, I know, that's not what I'm saying, I'm just saying, I know, we know this is a hard decision, I don't want to make a hasty decision either, but I also want to give them as much time as they possibly can have to prep. We are putting a lot of expectations on the school system.
Totally
We are
agree.
wanting, we're wanting a lot of things done, they need time to.
But to
try to
John's
get-
point, we could start the day after Labor Day. I mean,
Yeah, no, that's
But-
true, but I'm just saying, we can't, anyway.
it
But
can't go
John-
on forever, but
Are you bringing these people in to help you decide this trigger mechanism? Because I'm not saying that you
Yeah.
can't continue to work on that. Once you make the decision, you can still refine, you don't have to decide what your trigger is. You may decide the second week of September, hey, Dr. Green came and spoke to us, this is the way we should go. You don't have to have your trigger mechanism in place the day you make the decision. I don't think you're going to between now and Monday. But it doesn't mean that you can't still try and refine your data sources and see what other people are doing and come up. I don't think we need to decide in concrete on Monday, hey, if our infection rate in the county is over X, then we're shut down, and if it's under X, I think that's something you keep working on, to me.
No, I think that's a good point. I think in my assumption it is, the deciding whether you go 100% virtual or in the classroom. But I think you have a very good point that even if it's chosen to be 100% virtual, that doesn't mean that you can't get information a week later or a month later and decide it's time to open the classroom.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
that's true.
And guys, I've hit my witching hour. I'm sorry. Thank you for putting the time
Thank you.
in a place I could go. Thank you for calling me.
Yeah, thanks for coming out.
All right. Continue.
Um,
Thank you.
I'd like to, I had some other thoughts about just opening the, if we were to choose 100% virtual, maybe 100% is not exactly the right number. It's like 90% virtual, because we have had discussions about allowing in-person instruction to happen for the more vulnerable groups of learners. And I think, I don't think it has to be the buildings are closed because we're too scared of the virus. I think it can be, there's a spectrum of risk, and fewer people in the building. It's not without risk, but there's less. And there's more of a chance that those fewer people that we have prioritized as needing in-person instruction can stay in the building and stay face-to-face longer and more safely than if everyone returned to school. So I think, you know, I heard someone describe this as choosing to spend risk. And, you know, if you have a group of, I know we have a group of staff members and teachers who want to be back in the classroom and are willing. And I know that we have students who, without access to face-to-face instruction, are going to lose a lot. And if we could somehow, you know, bring those two groups together in small, very distanced numbers, especially given that a lot of those more vulnerable students, like special education students, for example, are going to have a much harder time wearing a face mask and following social distancing. And yet we, at least I feel that those are the groups that need to be there the most. Keeping the numbers even lower density could allow for those needs to be met. And you know, and then just as a side note, there was a plan that came out from Harford County, Maryland, that I saw yesterday and I shared with the board. They opened something to what Chip was saying. They opened these learning support centers in every school where students could come. It's supervised. They get transportation and meal service, and they can access the internet. And they ask, if your children can stay home, keep them home. But if they need a safe place to be, you know, we can provide that and staff it with instructional assistants and provide them internet. And so I think, again, it's choosing to spend risk where it's most needed and, you know, hopefully be able to keep the people who need it most in buildings for a longer amount of time. I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't have to be this dichotomy. We're 100% closed or 100% open. There's a spectrum.
So again, I'll say what I said earlier. I think this board has to determine what your philosophy is.
Yeah, that's mine. And Zara said that she's got a flexible philosophy. It's not black and white, and that's fine to me anyway. I'm comfortable with gray.
Okay. I'll just do my best.
I was, maybe it wasn't a respectful interruption, so I apologize for that. But please, if you feel that my comment wasn't where you were going, I would like to hear what you say.
Well, so having said what I said, we still have this issue of how many. So how many students will that be? If we're 100% virtual, we have a cadre of teachers who are assigned to teach in a virtual environment. Every teacher will be assigned a class. Working with instructional assistants, what is the end goal? Is the end goal to facilitate learning or to monitor kids on a computer in the cafeteria? I mean, that's because they're not the same. And I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, well, and so, and we obviously don't have to do what other, what Hartford or happening with it is doing. But in my mind, if we were to select digital, I do believe that there are parents and kids who are going to need instruction and support on how to download things. It seems, ridiculous to say that, but we are going to need support on, okay, you're going to click this button, and then it's going to pop up here, and this is how you access this from home.
So we talked about this briefly yesterday.
Yeah, we'll have a help desk that we're going to be able to staff from our technology department. I mean, that's been part of the conversation that I've had with Dr. Schubert about having staff
Mhm.
available
Mhm.
to answer questions by phone, by email. So it's just like a typical help desk would be anywhere.
Right.
So that's something that we've already started having conversation about.
Okay,
So yes, there will be issues because we're going to have, as an example, a rising kindergartner, an entering kindergartner who's never used a Chromebook.
Right.
You know, we
This
are
is how you
starting
turn it
to
on.
see, right, we are starting to see a few people who are deferring kindergarten enrollment this year because of this situation. I
Sure.
just found a letter this morning that Renee had left for me for somebody who had stated that they were going to defer enrollment for another year. It's not been a mass exodus, but people are starting to think about this and to not enroll their kindergartner this year. But yes, we will have people who have questions. You know, if you're going to bring students in for the first 2 weeks to teach them how to download and to teach them what the virtual environment looks like, the exposure is going to be there because we're going to have to do half at a time. The exposure is going to be there. So to me, it would make sense to just kind of continue with that. If we have select students who are in the building, and I'll go back and make one further comment about that. How do we collectively respond to parents who say, I want my kid in school too? I'm willing to accept the risk that Zara alluded to. What is that risk? But I want my student in school. How do we respond to those folks?
I'd say the state directs us to prioritize the most vulnerable learners in this scenario, and that's exactly what we'd be responding to.
And that's accurate.
Yeah.
Those questions will come.
Putting a cap on it, because you can't have, 50% of the school population saying, we want to sit in the classroom because, that we chose the hybrid model and we're going to get it.
Right.
That's a fine one. So I was just trying to look up Denmark's 7-day rolling average on coronavirus deaths, since they were mentioned as a great success story, and I think it takes me back to, we need to decide, we need to have something that helps us decide when we're going to open the schools. And I just keep coming back to that because we're not comfortable with the data from Denmark, or the data are available here, but Denmark's different. I cited those population cases per 100,000 at the meeting, and I was a little uncomfortable with it because it's cumulative, and it doesn't give you a snapshot of where
Like a
you are
7-day
today.
rolling average.
Because today is more important than what happened,
Sure.
A month ago, and it's more, and it doesn't help you with what's going to be going on in a month. They do have the 7-day rolling average. That data is available. Currently, Clarke's at 2, Lowndes at 9.5, Frederick's at 6.6. Some of the school systems that have decided to go 100% virtual, Prince William 9.5, Arlington 8, Richmond 11. The worst in the state, Westmoreland, is 53.9.
Is Westmoreland digital?
I don't know what they're doing, but they're the highest.
I haven't seen anything on them yet.
So these are 7-day rolling averages of new confirmed cases or
Correct.
deaths?
You confirm.
Okay.
So that gets us a little bit closer to, having seen that, I felt like, maybe this is something. And I think to your point, if you got a 7-day rolling average that's going through the roof because you have a contained outbreak in a facility, then maybe that's not a rationale for shutting down. But if it was community wide, as far as our neighbors, that's another thing I've been puzzling over is, what about the context of what's going on around us? What's going on? We don't live on an island, but our school system is a subset of our community. And the fact that we don't live in an island, we have to rely on our community to keep the local infection rate low in order for us to have the schools open. We can't do it without the broader community. As far as not living in an island, that means that whenever anyone leaves the island, they have to be responsible and they have to come back and not infect other people. And there we get to start, then we have to say, then that allows us to say, we're just going to look at Clarke because, okay, Loudon is a fair bit higher than we are, multiple of 5. And People go to Loudon all the time, but if you're gonna go to Loudon, be responsible when you're there so that you don't mess things up in Clarke, and we can actually have the school system be open. And we can't look at Loudon and say, and if we take that and people are successful at it, then we don't have to consider Loudon so much. We have to consider our actions when we go to Loudon and when we come back, but we don't have to necessarily stare at Loudon. And if we fail, our 7-day average is going to go up. We shut the schools. That's just it. We need the community in order to succeed. And I think there's a way for us to have something. And whatever threshold we set, whatever the number is, 2, is it too high? Is it not? I don't know. But I don't know what Denmark is either. And if they're touted as a success story, 2's not far from 0. 2 may be very far from 0 to some. But to me, without having something that helps me, then we're adrift in the sea of feelings, and I get lost there. I just gotta say it. So I go back to, we're uncertain. This question: do we want to try to find a metric that allows us to articulate, to guide us, and inform the community on moving forward? Zara said she wanted to be weighted. Chip was uncertain. Monica was uncertain. I don't think I heard from Katie, but it's fine. I don't have to get what I want, but I'm going to lobby for it. So I guess I pulled this back here. Katie, questions to you?
Okay, rephrase the question for me. The data,
Do we want to try to find a metric that allows us to determine when we have kids in school? And
digitally or hybrid?
when we have kids in the school,
Okay, so when we're in the school,
that allows us, that says, this is when you go to school, and teachers, you got to take it. It says that too. It says kids are allowed in school. If parents don't like it, they can opt out. I'm not still worried about the parents and the students. As long as we keep up our bargain on keeping the protocols in place, I think that's the parents' decision and not my decision. The teachers, we're telling them, you got to go. That's a little different. And so, I feel a little differently about that. So, but it says the same thing. This is the window, and if we're in that window, then I would say, teachers, I'm sorry, you either take it or you cannot work. And for the community, we would say this is when it's the opportunity, and if we leave this window, then we're going to shut the schools down. You can see it because it's a 7-day rolling average. It doesn't jump the next day.
So my thoughts are, I need more time to think about it. I've got to process what you're saying.
Sure.
Or what you're asking. I do, and I've heard this multiple times through lots of different conversations. I feel very frustrated by the comment. If a teacher or an employee has a concern outside of themselves, like, maybe a family member who has cancer, or vulnerable parents who cannot get the virus because the likelihood of them surviving is very slim. I feel so frustrated by the comment, well, lose your job then. So if we say that we want to be a county that values our teachers and values our employees, and that our goal is to retain teachers, that is not an appropriate response. We'll lose your job. So we're asking people to, okay, I've worked for you, Clarke County Schools, for 15 years, and I've given a large part of my career to you, and you say that you value me, and I say, I want to be able to take my dad to chemo, and we say, well, see ya. What my question is, and I know businesses are doing that. Dentists. I heard an example today about a dentist who has a hygienist who's you know, we'll see you later. You've worked for us for 30 years, but that's your choice. You know, we're a small enough county that I would hope that teachers and our employees matter. And I also hope that we're thinking of ourselves as a community and not just, this works for me and this is what I want. And so that, John, plays a lot into my thought process. And it really seems like a huge contradiction to me to say, we value you as a teacher here. We want to retain our teachers, but we're not listening to you when you say, I have to make a choice between my job or being able to see my father who has a disease.
And that plays into the threshold.
Of the emotional piece.
No, it
Right.
plays into the threshold window.
Uh-huh.
At some point, we're gonna have to tell people they gotta go back to the classroom. At some point.
Well, sure,
Yeah,
sure,
yeah.
absolutely.
And so the question is, where is that?
And
point?
is
So
this the
we-
right time? I don't know.
Right.
And I think, Katie, to your point, that's why it was our decision when we submitted the survey to employees, is to work with them individually.
Mhm.
You know, the question was asked the other night, did you give teachers a question that says, do you feel comfortable? Well, the answer to that was no. I mean, that's the honest
Sure.
answer. Have the metrics changed now compared to a month ago when that was distributed? Well, we're seeing a little bit of a spike in cases in Virginia, not in this area
Yeah, right.
necessarily, but in Virginia as a commonwealth. But that's why we decided to do it independently.
Mhm.
And those conversations, instead of just somebody hitting a radio button
Sure.
on a form that says, yes, I'm concerned, Mr. Catlett's been able to have individual conversations with people about their situation, whatever their circumstances are. But I don't disagree with John's comment that at some point, when do we say we're going back to school? Is it when there's a vaccine that people won't be required to take? Is it when there's some drug that will treat symptoms so it, that dissipates maybe more quickly than it would without the drug? I don't know what the answer to that is. But at some point, we are going to hit that threshold when we have to say, okay, folks, it's time to come back to work.
Yeah, right.
Even
right.
if we start virtual and in the middle of the year, things have calmed down, there is a vaccine available, there is this drug that maybe some companies developed. I'm sure every resource and every drug company out there has gone to this because everybody wants to be first. When is that?
Mhm.
And I don't have the answer to that. I'm not asking for you to have the answer to it either. But there is going to be a window when we say,
Enough's
folks,
enough, right.
we have to get back to work. We have to be in schools and students have to be in schools.
Right. Well, and when you say get back to work, you mean back in the building?
Yes, I'm
So
sorry.
that,
Yes.
just so that, for clarification,
Yes.
you're going to be working your tail off
Absolutely.
digitally.
And I don't want to, I don't want to act like it's not
Yeah,
a lot of work.
right.
Any teacher you talk to will say that they
Yeah.
worked incredibly hard in the spring, posting assignments and communicating with students. And, so no, I'm
Right,
talking about
I just wanted to
physically
clarify
in the
that for
building,
you.
physically in the building.
So where I lean on to help me with that decision, that really difficult decision, when we tell teachers that they have to be in the classroom, is how well we can pull off the protocols in the classroom. And if we can't pull off the protocols in the classroom, then I think we would need to shut down.
So who says that the protocols aren't being met?
Well, we have the standards. The teacher would need to go through the processes that they go through with grievances or with, concerns, and then that would need to be investigated.
And would that be like a new process? I mean,
No, I think it probably exists.
The grievance-like processes, those are
So it
all
would
policy
be-
now, yeah. And, there is significant training that has to be done. We would be asking employees to self-assess, and to make sure that their temperature, et cetera, all the series of questions. Students, the teams who would be assessing the students as they arrive each morning, would have to be trained. Behind the scenes, we're working on Power School and how we could keep, instead of having paper documents, how we could record information on students. So we would have a team of teachers, employees, who would be assigned to those groups as they arrive at school in the morning. Those protocols would have to be followed.
And if hallways are a zoo and classrooms are a disaster, that would be a protocol failure as well.
That's not an easy thing to do. To
Well,
say,
yeah,
hey,
well,
this
yeah,
is,
absolutely.
I mean,
But
you know, as a
absolutely.
school, like,
But that's what I lean on. That's the only thing that allows me to say, teachers, you need to go back, is that if these things are in place and we're designing it to be in place, but if we can't execute, then we can't do it.
so, to your point, the whole mask thing, teachers are not going to, or these people who are doing the health screenings and up close with the student, they're not going to have an N95 mask.
Yes, they will.
They will.
I have ordered Mike Legg, they're on back order right
Okay.
now. Mike Legg has ordered almost 1,000 N95 masks for the school system.
And then they'll have a
Already.
sheet, the face shield as
They'll have,
well.
I have about 150 face shields in my closet right now. Rubber gloves, I have
Mhm.
gowns. Now, will I need to order more? Yes, as I said earlier, related to the science, we have what I would consider a starter kit right now.
Mhm.
But we will be stockpiling additional items. If
Okay.
the decision is made to
Yeah.
have any students in person, we would have those in place.
One thing too that is awkward to say, but you know, we struggled on Monday night to get you know, citizens or to wear masks or to put it up. And how are we going to do that with 16-year-olds? And at what point? So, you know, I know that we have said, well, you wear the mask, but it's also kind of like, I'm guessing, because we haven't been through this before, with the hat. Take your hat off. Okay, I'll put it back on as soon as you turn your head. Put your hat on, or take your hat off. Take your hat off. Take your hat off. Put your mask up. Put your mask up. What's the threshold? And I could see easily, like especially in a high school class, you know, going from class to class to class, consistently refusing to wear or consistently pushing a line. And then at what point is that student written up? And at what point is that becoming such a distraction to the teacher and a disruption to the classroom that it's worth it?
We don't have like written in policy or reg right now.
Right.
You're warned 3 times for wearing your hat,
Right.
which is
Right.
a good comparison because
Yeah.
it's, although a little different,
Yeah.
but it's a good
Right.
comparison. We don't have written right now that, you know, if we have to warn you 3
Mhm.
times that you get a day of
Mhm.
detention.
Sure.
I mean, consistent insubordinate behavior gets
Yeah.
student discipline of some
Right.
sort. There is conflicting information in almost all the documents that we've had at our disposal. If you look at the Department of Ed documents that are available, the big one, it says in that document that students should wear a mask if the 6 feet of distancing can't be maintained.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't require them all the time. Now, this board has the option of saying, no, you have to wear a mask. It says the same thing about staff members. If 6 feet of distance can't be maintained, a staff member should wear a mask. Then you go to other places, the governor says those 10 or older should wear a mask. So in an elementary school, that's basically 5th graders.
Right.
Who
Well, and
are
what's the point
typically
of-
a little more socially responsible in a lot of ways, but a kindergarten, I mean,
Right.
that will be where there's, you know, chaos, if you want to call it that. They're not going to be able to keep that mask on. You go to any of the stores, different places, and you'll see folks with 4, 5, 6-year-old smaller children. The parent might have a mask on, but the child doesn't. Again, there's just some conflicting information in the documents. Monica and I have talked about that a lot. So which way do we go? We can be more restrictive. But the guidance document states something totally different right now. And all of those are based on CDC, Virginia Department of Health, et cetera. They go into very great detail about how everything in those documents are in compliance with CDC and BDH.
If we needed to, for our teachers who teach the younger or less compliant students, as far as mask wearing, if we needed to, is it even possible for us to order N95s for all of those teachers that specialize the multi-disabilities? I'm thinking of those classrooms where the teacher can't count on, I mean, no classroom can the teacher count on 100% compliance the whole time, but where it's more likely that kids are not going to be able to wear a mask all day. Can we get our hands on enough N95s for those teachers to be protected?
Well, the additional order from 3M that we made is almost 1,000. So it's like 900. So we'll have that initial stockpile in place that we could potentially distribute to employees who are in a more at-risk situation. Younger students, multi-disabilities classrooms, those kinds of environments. Can we get more? I mean, I think that depends on, the federal government sometimes can seize those suppliers and say, we need those masks. They're not going anywhere except for here. And in this particular situation, we actually got an email earlier this week because Mr. Ladd had checked on where our N95 masks. And the response was that they were being sent by the federal government to places that needed them right now. Yes.
So we haven't even received the first
We
one.
have not.
We don't have any.
I have very few N95s.
So we have 1,000 that are ordered, but they're
They're
may or may
back
not
ordered.
get here because the federal
We have,
government
we
sees
have
them.
basically 6 weeks to get them, but yes.
That's crazy. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but just following the trend line of the data, it's not getting better in the U.S. And so I can't imagine the federal government all of a sudden not seizing whatever they need to give them to hospital workers. So we could end up with 0.
We could end up with 0 or 900 and have access to as many as we need. It'll be somewhere in between. That's the best answer I can give you at this point. I can only report out what I know about our initial order right now. And that was from an email from Mike's office earlier this week.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, the policy is needed for students to have to wear masks in classes. I have no issue with that. I was going to bring it up the last meeting, but I felt confident in our discussion that masks were expected, but if it needs to be a policy, I have no problem with that. If it's a policy for middle and high schoolers only, and we deal with elementary a little differently, and I can see that as not an issue.
I think it's going to need to be.
That's fine.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of feelings about that.
Yeah. I just want to bring up a couple of points. One is, Katie, thank you for saying those, making those remarks for teachers. I think that's a really great point. And just to emphasize what Dr. Bishop said, they do have a group of teachers that they are trying to work with and understand what their family circumstances. And I do believe that we're doing our best to try to work with them. In that same vein, based on that survey that John alluded to earlier, the parent survey we sent saying, how comfortable will you be? And it was this 90+%, right? Again, we gave Dr. Bishop the guidance to start that way. It's been a month and a half since that survey. So yeah, I can see maybe some people have changed their minds. When we send this, if we were to go with the hybrid model, we send the survey out to the parents on Tuesday or whenever we do. The amount of teachers we'll need in class will also be determined by how many families decide to choose hybrid, right? So even though we say 90% said, hey, we feel comfortable, that could drop to 60, right? And so we won't need as many teachers in the class. And so maybe we can work, we'll have to sort of be fluid in how we then work with the teachers and expectations of who will be in the class and who can work virtually. So I just wanted to make that point that there may be opportunities for us to, and I don't want to speak for Dr. Bishop because this is his wheelhouse, not mine. But there may be opportunities for us to try to work through things depending on the numbers we get back. I also want to mention that if we do go 100% virtual, there could potentially be an expectation that teachers do come into the classroom. Right. Their stuff is there, all their, everything they need. They can do their videos from there. They can have their,
Which digital access, it should not, will not be
an issue.
Right.
So I just wanted to highlight that. I'm not sure that's been brought up, but I think there's a high probability that will be an expectation. The teachers will come in.
Yeah.
They will be safe in their classrooms by themselves. I would like to think that they will be responsible if they're going to have lunch together, that they use one of the big rooms. So anyway, I wanted to highlight that point. We've been talking about data. John, I do not disagree that we should have some type of data threshold that can help us determine how we close, how we open. I think it's a great idea. I think it'll be helpful. We just need to figure out and pinpoint what those couple data points can be, or should be. And so just to get some things out on the table, I want to be mindful, it's already 11:35, is you brought up the safety of the staff who will be doing the health pre-checks. Let's not forget nurses. I brought it up Monday and I will say it again. Where I know we're going to have a few rooms, right, where we have isolation and we can take care of the, whatever the scraped knees and things, but let's not forget the nurses, that they're going to be an integral part of this whole thing.
And will we have enough substitute nurses? I think that's something that I've talked about with a community member. We may have to partner with, I don't know, our health department or, other nursing organizations so that, if we have a nurse who contracts the virus, that we can bring somebody else in.
Generally, that's been a challenge.
Yeah.
We have, 6 full years I've been here, substitute nurses have been few and far between. We are lucky often if we have one, maybe two, but most of the time one person that we can rely on to be a sub nurse. So that is a concern, not only if a nurse was to contract the virus, but what if she's sick?
Right.
And doesn't have the virus?
Right.
What if she has a sick child who
Right.
doesn't have the virus and needs to stay home? Or if there's a family circumstance that requires her to be out of work for a couple of days. A substitute nurse they're hard to come by. So we do have one right now that we know of that is available. But in terms of having a cohort of 12 people waiting in the wings to be a sub nurse, we don't have that.
Can I ask a question about, not about nurses, if we choose hybrid and digital, right? People have a choice between the two. Is it possible for us to offer advanced coursework to the digital students? This is a big community concern this week.
So I just got this morning. This is from Mr. Potts. I had him, he's been our advanced programs coordinator for years and understands these advanced programs probably better than anybody in the division, to be perfectly honest. So I'll share this with you, but I did print it off and bring it with me prior to coming down here. So for the majority of advanced coursework, yes, more than likely.
Okay.
Depending on the subject area.
And that's if we're concurrently running a hybrid
Correct.
Program and a digital
Correct.
program, the digital people can opt in.
So for example, IB has an official online course provider that's Moja Education, which provides IB coursework in many subjects that we offer, many of the courses we offer. They also prepare students for the test, which is done in the spring. Those courses do have a financial commitment that's paid by the families, or Moja Education does. So we have commitment for 2 years. I'm trying to paraphrase this, and again, I'll share it with you. It could be $1,350 for the first year and $1,420 for the second year. So it's about a $2,800 commitment.
For the family.
Correct.
Wow.
Because it needs to be done over 2 years, because some of the courses are 2-year courses. There's a part 1 and part 2.
Okay.
Is it 2,800 per course?
No. That would be, his notes are, many have to commit for 2 years, $1,350 for 2021 and $1,420 for 21-22. And I had Ms. Waring reach out to him after the conversation Monday night. IB has published documents for schools giving suggestions for teaching the IB program and completing assessments remotely. The ease of distance learning for IB varies from subject to subject, but could be feasible with the use of a variety of online tools. Google Classroom, Google Meets, other learning resources. I'm again paraphrasing directly from this document, not reading the entire thing. CCS teachers can, in his opinion, with a restructuring of the curriculum and a revision of existing learning materials, or the creation of new ones, adapt instruction to either a hybrid or a distance learning model. There are some weaknesses, though, in looking at this. IB requires teachers to be trained. So if we have, let's say, I'll just use IB English as an example. That'd be fairly easy to have as an online course. But if we have 20 students who sign up for that class, and 15 choose to be in a hybrid, and 5 choose to be virtual, that's a problem.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm asking, like staffing-wise, can we support that?
No. We don't have teachers who are trained, and many times in some of the IB courses, we don't have multiple sections. We could have one section of IB chemistry, as an example, or 2 sections. All chemistry right now is taught by Mr. Aiello. So Mr. Aiello would have the hybrid students in the classroom, while there's maybe 5 students who are in a virtual learning environment. So who's going to teach the 5?
Right. And that's a triple job
It is.
for Dr.
It
Aiello.
is.
That's
So-
hybrid, planning for the days your students aren't there,
Correct.
and digital.
Correct. So,
Right.
so that's where it breaks down. So that's why the documents say, and it is consistent. If you look at Fairfax County as an example, there is similar wording in their documents about your advanced programming options might be limited. Also, can you really teach chemistry virtually? How do you do the experiments, as an example? The book part, absolutely. But if there are materials or supplies that are needed to do and there would be, to do the experiments, then you're not going to have those in your home, more than likely. So staffing becomes an issue. So there could be some limitations. So yes, there might be some courses, advanced courses that are available to students. There would be some that would not.
Okay.
What about in the middle school? Will honors classes be offered? Because that's something that's kind of been thrown out a lot.
No, see, the honors courses are Clarke County approved.
Okay.
There is no outside agency that's responsible for monitoring and maintaining instructional integrity of those programs. When you start thinking about IB and AP and even dual enrolled courses at North Fairfax, we are working with and through an external agency that have different requirements. Many of our IB and AP courses are also dual enrolled. Some students take those credits in IB class, as an example, take it for the IB credit toward the diploma. Some students take it as an IB courses student. They're just enrolled, they're not looking for the diploma, they're just enrolled in the class and might be seeking the credits from North Fairfax. So even in one IB class, you could have students who are IB only, some who are just in there for the dual enrollment credit, or some who might do both. So every student in the class would be maybe looking at a different path. So staffing wise, it creates some real issues and concerns when you start thinking about something like chemistry. And I use that as an example because the chemistry department is, and it's all based on endorsements and certifications. The chemistry department is primarily a person of one. Not unusual for smallish high schools. Physics,
Yeah.
it's a department of one, basically.
And then that, sorry, Monica, because I know you want to get to your questions. One thing though that has come to my mind then, and this is not going to be popular, is do you get rid of valedictorian and salutatorian because we're not providing, or, class rank, because students shouldn't have to choose their health. They may have an underlying health condition. They shouldn't have to choose their health over their education, or vice versa. Or a parent who has cancer and is going through chemo treatment and they have to learn virtually. And I don't know, I mean, that's a discussion that may come up.
It might. The other thing, just let me clarify, and I did give you the information from the document, but those costs, the $1,350 and the $1,420 are per course,
Okay.
not for the year. I'm sorry. That's just a clarification.
Thank you.
Actually.
And if we were fully digital, 100% online, those courses would be available to everyone. Correct? Is that accurate?
Because the teacher would be teaching.
Because that
The
teacher would be
teaching
freed
in
up.
a virtual
So you
environment.
wouldn't have to pay $1,400.
You wouldn't have to pay and you wouldn't conceivably be shut out of them because of a staffing.
I need to get some clarification on that for sure, but let me get the answer to that.
And those
I'll
classes are
let you-
specific to
Yeah.
IB.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
So.
What about AP?
AP, like, that's not the same, right?
AP is not the same. There is some AP teacher institutes that teachers participate in. We'll have to reach out just to make sure, but I'm not aware that.
Okay.
The test, because AP is different. As an example, you can just sign up to take the test without taking a course. And if I had just decided one spring I wanted to take the AP statistics exam, I could take it even though I didn't take AP statistics.
Khan Academy has them for free on a lot of AP classes for free on their website.
So there was a question in here about online courses. We do have a policy that restricts the number of online courses that could be transferred into the diploma, for diploma requirements. And it is limited to those programs that are approved multi-division online providers by the state. The reason we've done it that way is the state vets those multi-division online providers to make sure that the learning objectives are comparable to the SOLs and are in alignment with the SOLs. There's a long list of programs that have been approved. And that's why we went that direction when we wrote the regulation. It has to be an approved multi-division online provider by the state.
Would we potentially look at revising that policy, I guess, because we have limited the number of courses, that's going to have to change.
I think that's something we could talk about.
Yeah.
If we can't meet a student's need within that policy.
Right.
There are also opportunities sometimes for students to take courses through Lord Fairfax that can be concurrently enrolled with Lord Fairfax in the high school, and those credits can be transferred back. So there are some options that are out there.
Monica, with 10 minutes left, you want to just let everyone have an opportunity to get some final thoughts out before we wrap up? How do you want to handle the last 10 minutes?
That's fine. The only two things I'd like to just outline as a to-do for now for Dr. Bishop is wording for the advanced courses for hybrid, which I think we've talked about, right? And we got a lot of noise about the sports for kids who are going to participate virtually. I think a majority of us would like to strongly consider having students who select virtual instruction as an option, but they also are allowed to participate in sports.
I shared with you the other day the Virginia High School information. I think I forwarded you that email when that came out. There will be no sports Right now, one of the options is no sports, basically in the fall. But the options, there's another option that compresses the seasons, and then another option that takes spring sports, those outside sports that are lower risk, moves them to the fall. Things like track and field, baseball, etc.
Flipping
Tennis.
seasons.
Just flipping seasons. In option 2, the winter season would be the first season that would be available, and that would start till early December through mid-February. And then you have your fall season after that, kind of the early to mid-spring. And then you would have your spring season that would run through, I think it was June 26th. So a final decision on that will be made in the coming week.
The 27th.
Yes. So, or about 10 days. So we'll see how that goes. But we know right now, there won't be football in the fall for sure. There won't be volleyball in the fall. Option 1 had cancellation of basically everything in the fall except golf and cross country. Just to clarify again, in a full virtual environment, we'll have to take a look at some courses to see how we offer things like IV chemistry. How does that work? How do we do it? So we have some conversations that we have to have. It might not. People are looking at this as if things are going to be the way they always have been, and we're not in that situation. While we want to offer a robust virtual program to those who choose that option, as well as to all of those who will be in it eventually, I think at some point this year, things aren't going to look the same as they always have. And we'll have to work through that.
Thank you. Okay, so do we want to go ahead and, I know we could go on forever, and that is not what I'd like to do right now, but I don't think any of us will want to, but go ahead, let's go ahead and end with some final thoughts, and then I'll make some comments at the end.
I'll let you start.
Great. I don't think we can afford furloughs. The reason I don't think we can afford furloughs is because we need to be able to reopen at any time. I think our greatest failure would be to have the opportunity to open and not be able to pull it off because we sent everybody off to some other place. So I don't think we can afford furloughs regardless of what we do. The 100% option, as I said earlier, I see it. It's interesting because we have a lot of details on the hybrid model, and so we're like, this doesn't feel really all that comfortable, and I get that. We don't have the same level of detail on the 100% virtual model, and therefore, I think I'm concerned that it may be more aspirational than real in terms of its attractiveness. So there's questions for me there, and it doesn't mean we can't leave it at a later time, but I see it as perpetual disruption. I see that it potentially does help support the even access to upper level classes. I would recognize that it is not synchronous because there's a lot of people that don't have access to synchronous opportunity. So it will not be synchronous. And I think that it is not for 100% of the kids because I think that there will be kids that fall through the cracks, just like what happened last spring. So it's not going to work for everybody. And so we have to weigh in some degree, do we want to buy it? Do we want to emphasize the opportunity for our highest achievers, or do we want to try as best we can to ensure the opportunity for our most vulnerable? I think that there is a framework for us to help decide when it's appropriate to get back into school. And I think that would work for us as a board, and it would work for the community. And I strongly encourage us to go there. And if I may be so bold, if it's the agreement of the chair, to put on Chuck's to-do list to try to get Dr. Green in front of us as soon as we can. And then finally, I think it's important that we keep open minds in this dynamic environment. And as we make our decisions, there's several decisions. There's a decision when we put kids in class, and then there's a separate decision, and that has implications on teachers, okay? And then there's a question of, can we pull it off? And I think, there's a lot of conversation on, and I'm not so sure we can pull it off. Now, I lean on Chuck, but then we ask all these modifications, and then Chuck needs to come back to us and say, well, you're asking for modifications on something that I barely struck together, and it's gonna blow it up or it's not. And yeah, we need to vet that. We need to ensure it, but I do lean on Chuck with that. I think, there's the potential of doing a Lynchburg model. It hasn't been mentioned. If we think the resources are too thin to have all grade levels, then your phase one is just elementary school. They're the ones that need it the most and are least likely to succeed on the virtual side of things. So then you can put you can have a reserve of nurses if that's your concern for just the elementary schools. You can have a reserve of teacher aides. You can have all sorts of perhaps resources that otherwise would be really spread out, consolidated on one thing. So there's the open mind, and with the open mind, I need this a lot myself, and I think that's why Mr. Schutte, Chip, is so helpful to me. I mean, I think he and I kind of butt heads, and you probably saw a little bit of that, but in that process, and why I value him as a board member is that he kind of cracks me open and helps me see different perspectives. So I just wanted to mention that.
Ms. Ryan?
I think that we all know, parents, teachers, administration, board members, that face-to-face learning is just superior to virtual learning. And so if we end up choosing, virtual learning, it feels like it doesn't feel like we're choosing it. It feels like it's being chosen for us, by the circumstances of this virus and the knowledge that we will end up there. So, in my opinion, if we end up choosing virtual learning, we're choosing to direct our energy over the next 6 weeks into making what is likely to become the only mode available to us as good as we can make it. I know that would put parents in a childcare bind, as would hybrid. Neither one of them are perfect, but our mission as a school division is to provide an education, and we can't meet every need, including childcare. And I think that the equity of access to advanced programming, gifted, whatever sports, extracurriculars is important to consider as well. And as Katie said, asking a student to choose their education over their health, it's a hard thing to ask them to do, just like asking a teacher to choose their job over their health or the health of a family member is really difficult. I'm all for the using the data and having Dr. Green come and talk to us. I think that would be really helpful in kind of giving us a really transparent way to metric that we could communicate to parents and staff about at what point do we shut this down and at what point do we reopen it. I think it would be really, really broad. There would be a lot involved in creating that. I don't know. I don't know if we can pull it off either. I'm not sure. I mean, knowing that it's hard to come by supplies and the things that we need to keep people safe. I don't know. And I'm open-minded to, I think we talked about that in June, all K through 6 attending, more often and everyone else being remote. So there's just so much to think about. really appreciate everyone's perspective here.
So there are a lot of thoughts swirling in my mind. One thing that I haven't mentioned is that all of us have talked to anyone that wants to share their thoughts with us. And, you know, I'm still open to that over this weekend. And, you know, a lot of times when I'm out running, I'll just stop and talk to someone and say, what are you thinking? Hey, while you're walking around the park, what are your thoughts? and I'm truly listening. And you know, one thing that did surprise me that we haven't mentioned. So we talk a lot about the most vulnerable, and we talk a lot about the gap groups that are so important, that we pay attention to, and that we track progress. So during my, you know, stopping random people, I have had a couple of conversations with families that are of a lower socioeconomic status. And in my mind, I've been thinking those kids need to get back to school. And so I've asked these families, you know, what are your thoughts? And they have said, we're homeschooling. And took me a minute to process some of those conversations because that's not at all what I was expecting. But to follow up with that comment, they said, Katie, we can't afford to get sick. And I can't afford to be in the hospital. And so I have to keep my kids home and I'm going to homeschool them. And I'm not sure that, you know, that these families have much further than a high school education. And so it's important through all of this to listen to as many different perspectives as possible and to move out of our group of friends and our group of community members that we know pretty well to hear different thoughts. Because what I think, you know, get ELL students back, get lower socioeconomic students back, get special education students back. Their concern is their health. And I have a very hard time reconciling myself to the fact that someone in our school system could die because of a decision that I'm making, bottom line. And we can make up, maybe not, you know, this bizarre gap year, but I can't bring back somebody's father or mother who's going through chemotherapy. And we have community members who are parents who are going through chemotherapy, and they're going to send their kids back to school because their kids want to play football or baseball. And we're saying, no, you can't because you didn't pick the hybrid model. So you know, that's an important thing to consider. And coming from a family that my husband lost his mother when he was 16 years old, that has impacted his entire life. And so and she had cancer when he was in high school. We have to take, you're right, John, in saying that data points are important, but you also have to take into consideration so many other factors. This is it's a historical moment for us. And I don't have any answers, but those are my thought processes right now. We know that whatever decision we make, people aren't going to be happy. We know, well, I'll say this, if we decide on 100% virtual,
That does not then mean I don't care about families and all the hardships that they're gonna have to go through and consider. If we decide hybrid, that does not mean that I don't care about the teachers and the kids' safety. But I want to make that very clear. Even if we select a choice that a parent did want, they're not going to be happy with how it gets delivered or something else about it. So ultimately, we're going to have a lot of, there are going to be a lot of issues. So I want to say something from a personal experience, but I'll hold off. So I just kind of want to really put some hard truths on the table. There will be sacrifices. And that doesn't, I'm not saying that to minimize what teachers are going through, their families, valedictorians. There will be sacrifices. That is just the times we are in right now. Things are not the same. So essentially, no matter what we do, we all have to understand there will be sacrifices. Some bigger than others, but again, it's the reality in which we're living in right now. If we decide on hybrid for families who decide they want to go to school, we've mentioned it a lot today, there will be disruptions. Absolutely. There might be disruptions with, this is an extreme, so I'm sorry I'm bringing it up, but with not having a nurse in the building. There might be disruptions with having a whole class wing, like a first grade wing or something. We have 10 people getting sick and we know we need to shut down. There are going to be disruptions. People who want to be in school, who are saying they want to get back to normal, we are not going back to normal. This is a new normal. And if you are under the pretense that going back to school is going to allow for the same social interactions as we had before, that is not happening. Will there be social interactions? Absolutely. And so we'll take what we can get, to be honest. It's going to be different. If you are a strong believer that you don't need to wear masks and we don't have to make you, great, fine. You do you, but then you will be asked to be a virtual learner. Everybody needs to understand what they're signing up for, regardless of whether it's virtual or hybrid. Things are not going to be the same. And no matter what choice you make, you'll probably still be unhappy. We are a school division that does the best we can do. Dr. Bishop and his staff and teachers and us, we show up every single day to make sure we provide the best education we can. The expectations on us this go around are so much higher because we have childcare issues to think about. We have families who have, one income. And so you were talking about health in school. We're talking about teaching your kids and staying home or going to your job. These are the hard truths. There's a lot more and I can't think of them all. Parents, I'm going to go back to our survey. End of May, beginning of June, we got the responses, 90+ families said they feel comfortable. That's the guidance we gave. That's where we're at. This is the plan that's been written. To some degree, we have to let parents choose. If they don't feel safe going to school, that is why we absolutely have in this plan to go virtual. To some degree, I feel like we have to let the parents choose. The conundrum with that is trying to keep everybody safe. The conundrum with that is the social accountability that this community has to buy into. If we let these parents choose, if we let these kids come to school, if we say these teachers have to come in, then this community has to show up. I cannot say that enough. And you all know how strongly I feel about that. This is a community effort. This is not just the school division. This burden is just not on the families. It's just not on Chuck, on the teachers. This burden is on everybody that lives in Clarke County. You want to go to school? Everybody needs to show up. Here is my personal experience. You talked about the sacrifices of health in school. I know you all know this, but I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there. I have a daughter who's immunocompromised, who was born without an immune system. This virus is quite literally, and I'm not over dramatizing, quite literally life and death for my child. She is a rising junior. This county, the school division, has done so much to accommodate the needs for her. Make accommodations at school. We decided as a family to put her in the public school system. We also decided to move to Clarke because it was smaller, and we hoped we would get a little more attention, and we did. So I'm beyond grateful. I can't put it into words sometimes. This is life and death for her. I have a rising senior. If I choose 100% virtual, what am I doing? I'm taking away her senior experience, which, by the way, is already kind of a debacle, right? But then this has impacted now my senior, mentally, socially, because now she has to also consider, as a 17-year-old, I really want to go to school, but I have a responsibility to my sister. There are sacrifices. And yes, people are going to have to choose health over school, and it stinks. But that is the reality in which we live. Hannah was so excited for her junior year, and she's had a lot of health issues while in high school and has had to miss a lot of in-school, in-person class instruction. And she is really bummed. She is obviously really upset. But we're picking health for her over school. And we will figure it out, and we will make do. I'm also very fortunate. So I have some of those resources. So again, you don't have to show up for me necessarily, but you need to show up for these other folks who might not have who aren't as fortunate as I am to have these, I don't know what I just said, but we need the community to show up to help support folks who might not have as many resources as some of us do. Big sacrifices. Not an easy decision. And the community has to show up. So everybody listening on YouTube, tell all your friends. Everybody in this room, tell all your friends. Show up. Don't put this burden just on the school system, and don't kid yourself that it is. This is a community effort, statewide, nationwide, worldwide. And just because we make one decision over the other doesn't mean we didn't listen and weren't open to every single perspective. We're just trying to do the best we can do. And Katie hit the nail on the head. Whatever decision we make could impact a life. It's a big deal. I struggle with it every day, and every time Chuck and I talk, that I bring it up every single time. So you want to go to school? We want to keep everybody alive, healthy, and safe to the best of our ability? Show up. Everybody show up. I have a thought, and we know Monday is going to be the night we're supposed to approve. I also understand we don't want to feel rushed. I did talk to Chuck about it yesterday, and while it is not ideal, because I, as the chair, really want to approve this on Monday. I am wondering if we can put a school board meeting on the calendar for Wednesday night, since today is Friday. We made the announcement, would that be enough time?
3 days if we made the announcement. It's 3 days if we made the announcement today, yes. I guess my question would be, for what purpose?
To definitely approve that night.
So,
Are we canceling Monday or?
Well, so that's the thing, I don't know, so I'm kind of like putting it there as a placeholder, because I don't want to miss, I don't want to decide Monday night that we can't decide, and then we're waiting till Thursday.
I'm all for it. I see it as an overflow lot. I don't see it necessarily as like there's something specific that night. You know, unless Dr. Green is available that night, then it becomes the Dr. Green night, and then it's also the overflow parking lot. So I'm for it. You know, and if we don't need it, we can cancel it. We have everything buttoned up on Wednesday. We don't have to come in on Wednesday, but I think it's better to have more opportunities to do something than less.
And again, I feel really strongly, I want to approve something Monday night, I want Chuck and his staff to get moving and grooving. I want these surveys to go out to parents. We got a lot of things to do. So, are you available Wednesday night?
And Dr. Green might be Monday or Wednesday, and then at least we give them 2
well, I put a note on my pad
days.
to contact him as soon as I go back upstairs. So I will, you know, I have obviously no idea what his schedule is. He might be available Monday, he might be available Wednesday, he might not be available for 2 weeks. I mean, I don't know what his schedule is, so I'll try to get him here on Monday if he can come. If not, I'll try to get him here on Wednesday. But yes, I am available on Wednesday. I have a meeting that afternoon, broadband committee, but I'm available that night.
Are the rest of you available?
Yes.
6:30 start time?
So we'll announce it today just to have it, and then if we need to, on Tuesday, we could send out a cancellation if that's the case. For now, good with that.
Okay, any other final comments? Thank you for being here today. Dr. Bishop, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
I will adjourn.